Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Is the sound on now? I think so. Okay. Well, it's again a wonderful pleasure for me to be here. I have to admit that when David contacted me about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in India and we had a call in the middle of the night and he told me about this company and I had not heard of this company. And then he sent me information about it and, I sit on the board of a publicly traded IT services company in India. And then I started reading about your firm and I was tremendously impressed. I really think this is a jewel, small jewel at this point, but this is a wonderful company and has a tremendous growth potential in the future and a tremendous potential to have a positive impact in the world. So I'm really delighted to be here to share some thoughts with you. These are the kinds of companies for whom this message actually is very powerful because it's not that you have to change everything. You've already got the fundamental elements that you need. But this then allows you to think even more broadly and also think in a broader way about the context, the way the world is changing and how that is aligning completely with what you are as a company. You are positioned in the right spot. You're in the right place at the right time with the right approach. And now it's a question of making it conscious and taking it to another level. So what we're going to talk about is this idea of conscious capitalism, which is the phrase that we now use, which for me came out of my work in this book, as was mentioned, on Firms of Endearment. And I'd like to start with this metaphor. I think you're all familiar with this process, a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Remember when you're children, when you first see this, you say, wow, there really is magic in the world. Because it feels like magic, right? How can that creature become something so different? And if you think about what that means, the caterpillar for its brief existence, what does it do? All it does is consume. The caterpillar is actually a bit of a nuisance, right? It chews up all the leaves and it has no purpose in life other than consumption. But then at some point, nature activates certain cells, they call imaginal cells, and it goes into that intermediate phase and then emerges as this other creature, the butterfly, a creature of light and beauty, but also something that adds value in the world. What does a butterfly do other than look pretty? It pollinates, right? And that allows for so much of what we see around us, the food that we eat, and so much of the abundance of nature is aided by what the butterfly does. So that is a higher level of being, if you will, than a caterpillar, because it's creating value not just for itself, but for others. And I think we as human beings have that same potential. We can transform even more radically than a caterpillar transforms. It may not be so visible, but we are capable of that. But it has to be a conscious process. As one of the philosophers said recently, we have reached such a degree of freedom that we are in charge of our own mutation. We can make a decision to operate at a low level of consciousness or at a high level of consciousness. And the same thing is true of our corporations. We create them in our image. We've got this mentality that says corporations exist to maximize profits for shareholders, etc. That's a very low-level, caterpillar-like definition of the purpose of a business. It really doesn't excite anybody, it doesn't inspire anybody, and it really doesn't solve very many of the world's challenges, and doesn't give you a sense of meaning and purpose. But we can also operate at that higher level, where we are entities of light and beauty and value creation in the world. So that's really what we aspire to. Now, before I talk about conscious capitalism, I just want to talk a little bit about capitalism itself, because as you know, it's an institution that is tremendously under attack right now. There's so many people around the world that think capitalism is the problem. That, this is why we have income inequality and this is why the environment is getting degraded and all of that. And I think they're not recognizing the tremendous power and contribution that capitalism has made in the world. Not only has it given us all these incredible technologies and life-enhancing inventions that we cannot imagine living without, but it has also done a tremendous amount to lift the average person in the world. So if you go back and look at 200 years ago, almost 90% of the people in this planet, including Europeans and Americans, lived in abject poverty. What do I mean by that? Less than $1 a day in today's terms. That was the common condition of humanity. And around 200 years ago, we started to see the Industrial Revolution combined with free enterprise capitalism, free markets, free people, the formation of organizations, corporations, etc. And we saw tremendous advances in a very short amount of time. You can see for about 2,000 years, from the year 0 to the year 1800, we made virtually no progress in elevating the living conditions of the common person, the average person. Per capita income went from $450 to maybe $550 in 1,800 years. Can you imagine that? In 1,800 years, we increased just by 20%. But then it took off exponentially. And today we're close to $8,000 or $9,000 per person. Just in the last 200 years. We're going from 500. So we've had a dramatic impact on alleviating poverty and bringing the benefits of modernity, technology, better life. So now we have 17% of the world's population that lives on less than $1 a day. That's still a lot. That's still 1 billion people.